These are good books, not great books. Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to another wrap-up of some of the reading I've been doing this month in January. 4 books which I think are good books, none of which I think are particularly great books, which, I think there might be some controversy with some people regarding one of these books. So the first book I want to talk about is the book Cultish. Cultish is a nonfiction work. Actually, the whole title of Cultish is Cultish, the Language of Fanaticism, and it's by Montell. It was in the BookTube Prize a few years ago, and I think it did okay, did pretty well. I can't remember exactly. I read it because, well, for obvious reasons, here living in the United States, cult and cultist behavior has kind of been on my mind as we approach the election season for 2024, and so I wanted to read this book. I think it is a really good and informative book, and what it looks at is how cult and cult-like organizations use language to establish control, to separate their followers from other people, to create that distinction, to create a sense of family, community, of kind of shared interest, and to kind of create this kind of isolating effect. And as far as that goes, I think it's great. Montell talks about every cult organization from Jim Jones, the Hale Bop cult, which I can't remember the actual name of, which committed a mass suicide as well. Scientology comes up, as well as discussion of various fitness crazes and other things. And she points out that they all have things in common about the way in which they use language and how they use language to establish this kind of control, and to kind of, in some ways gloss over the more obviously culty issues within it. I thought the book was really good and informative. I have to be honest with you, Montell's writing style bothered me from time to time. It felt a little informal, a little chatty, a little flippant sometimes for the subject matter she's talking about. But kind of what bothered me the most is in the beginning of the book, she's always, talking about something and saying, "Oh, but I'll get to that in, chapter 9 or something like that." I don't know why. Maybe I think there's going to be a theme here that I'm kind of an old man, so lots of things bother me in an old manish way, but that bothered me. But anyway, a book well worth your time if you're interested in it. The second book I want to review is Crook Manifesto by Colson Whitehead. This is the second in, I can't remember what he's calling it, Ray Carney trilogy, Harlem trilogy. Anyway, it's the second book in that. It's the sequel to Harlem Shuffle, which I read and I really, really liked. Once again, as in Harlem Shuffle, we are kind of focusing on the life and work and family of a black man living in Harlem. His name is Ray Carney. He owns a furniture store, and he is prospering. Here in the second part, he is kind of prosperous and he's being more successful. And if you read Harlem Shuffle, and I'm sorry if this spoils anything for you if you haven't, Ray Carney is kind of a minor criminal in the sense that he works as a fence, he sells stolen items. He gets part of the money, and the people who stole the items and bring him to him gets part of the money. But he's essentially retired from that business after his adventures that you'll find in Harlem Shuffle. And he's essentially decided to, go legit. That's what he's going to do. He gets pulled back into the criminal world because his daughter desperately wants to see the Jackson 5 live in concert, and he wants to get these tickets, and he ends up kind of getting drawn back into the criminal world through a corrupt cop who promises him to get the tickets. And there's really involved, which I'm going to call caper here, and that leads to the next caper, which involves not a corrupt cop, but it involves a movie that's being shot in Harlem, and its star goes missing. As is true in Harlem Shuffle, Ray Carney oftentimes goes to a friend of his father's who is in fact a criminal and a real tough guy, the kind of guy who you're pretty sure has killed people and knows where to dispose of the bodies. His name is Pepper. Pepper is an absolutely great character. And he goes to Pepper for kind of help in helping to find this missing star of this movie that Carney's involved with, and that leads to trouble. And then the last one of the capers involves arson, and it almost costs Carney and Pepper their lives. These are fairly violent books, even though I don't think there's any description in the book of violence that is so that would be overly disturbing to most adult readers, people who've read books before. I think this is good. It's not as good as Harlem Shuffle. Harlem Shuffle was better, and maybe it's just because, in Harlem Shuffle, Ray Carney's a new character, and the setting is new, and I think most importantly, Whitehead's almost obsession with the details of Harlem and New York during the time period in Harlem Shuffles feels like it's the backdrop for the stories. And I think it from time to time in Crook Manifesto, this second book that I'm reviewing, it feels like that Whitehead's a little bit more interested in the history and the detail of Harlem than he is in the story. That doesn't mean the stories aren't good. It just means that sometimes that level of detail feels just a little bit overwhelming. And so for that reason, and sometimes distracting, to the point of being distracting is what I'm trying to say. And so for that reason, I don't think Crook Manifesto was as good as Harlem Shuffle, which I thought was really good. The third book I want to review, and this is the one that's likely to be the most controversial, is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This was a really popular book this year, I believe, on BookTube, and I think a lot of people were surprised. I don't think it was nominated for any of the major prizes. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is a novel by a young writer named Gabrielle Zevin, and that youth of the author and her characters, I think, again, is going to tap into my, stay off my lawn, old man kind of issues here in my review. So Tomorrow, Tomorrow, Tomorrow follows essentially the relationship between two friends, Sadie Green and Sam, I just forgot his last name, Sam Mazer, who grow up in California, and they know each other in a really specific way. They have a falling out as children, and they're able to reconnect in Boston, where they're both going to college, and their friendship reignites, this really strong friendship. And Sam convinces Sadie to help him develop a video game. And they're going to develop a video game. And the plot of the book and a lot of the details and a lot of the real charm of the book, I think, involves this discussion of video games and their creation and how the gameplay, I think, for the generation of that the characters belong to is an important kind of social thing, an important kind of thing that connects them. It creates kind of a cultural zeitgeist within the gaming community, and all of that is in the book. They meet up with, or they become involved in a business venture to produce this first video game they're going to produce with Sam's roommate, a man named Marks Watanabe, who essentially becomes like the manager. These two guys, Sam and Sadie, are the creative people, and Marks is the business person. And they put out a video game, and from that they build a business which has varying degrees of success, and that business model puts stress on their relationship, puts stress on their relationship with Marks. Since I'm talking about three people here, you should imagine there is a something of a love triangle, though not necessarily a romantic love triangle, for all the people involved, and that a lot of the plot as it involves the characters and their relationship with one another has to do with misunderstandings and with the fact that these people don't tell one another what they're thinking or what they're feeling. They don't speak up for themselves when they should. They let things go. And so this is my kind of first old man point. And I saw somebody else, I can't remember who else I saw in BookTube review this recently, so forgive me for not remembering and being able to mention you specifically here. But they said, I just want to yell at these kids, why don't you just talk to one another? If you just talk to one another, you'd solve lots of these problems. I had that reaction too. And they just do a lot of stupid things. Sadie is in an incredibly awful relationship at some point in the book, and you just want to go, how could somebody this smart end up in a relationship like this? And so my old man brain says, well, this would never happen. And my rational brain says, this must happen far more often than we think about it happening, or that we, are somehow, always aware of it happening. And so there's that element to it. I thought that there were a lot of the big plot points were fairly predictable and obvious. You kind of see things coming from a long way off. But in the end, the resolution of the book and the friendship between these two characters comes through. And it really is a beautifully developed story about friendship with fully realized characters who are complex and who, don't always see eye to eye. And therefore it felt like a real accurate portrayal of friendship and that kind of relationship. And so in that ways, I thought it was beautiful. Of the four books I'm reviewing today, this one is probably the one I think is the best. I would still just kind of rate it as good and not necessarily as great. And then the fourth book I'm going to review today is a novel called Nightbloom by the Ghanaian, yeah, that's right, author Peace Adzo. Medie is her last name. Sorry, I wrote it down. I can't read my handwriting. And this is a really unique reading experience for me because it gives so much detail and insight into Ghanaian society and the world of Ghana and that society and that culture and that country today. Our story follows two young women essentially from very early childhood up until adulthood when both are married and have kids and businesses. And it follows their relationship. They're cousins. One's named Akorfa and the other's named Selassie. They are related through their father's family, and family is an incredibly important part of these stories. And what the people of Ghana see as family obligations, family connections, family customs that have to be observed, the way in which respect is owed to certain people and has to be paid is incredibly important and enriching part of this story. So we follow the story of the relationship between Akorfa and Selassie. The first part is Akorfa's story, and the second part is Selassie's story, and then the third part is where those stories meet back up. So in their youth, Akorfa and Selassie have a falling out. Around the time that they are going to university, they have a falling out. And this is largely based on the very different experiences that they have. And the different experiences they have in terms of wealth, in terms of family. Selassie's mother dies when she's young. Her father essentially has no interest in raising her. She then goes to her father's family, who is going to, take care of her and raise her. At some point, she comes to live with Akorfa and her father Yao and her mother Lucy. And Lucy, Akorfa's mother, is a piece of work, a greatly realized, fully developed, incredibly complex character, which in the end you may end up not liking very much, but a real achievement in terms of this creation, as are Akorfa and Selassie. One of the things that this book and Tomorrow have in common is this friendship between young people and the way in which each one of those characters is fully realized. So, like I said, the story's told in two parts. Akorfa's part, we see the story from Akorfa's point of view first, and then from Selassie. And we do get two very different takes on their experiences together, on what happened, why their friendship fell apart, and we get two really different takes on Lucy and what Lucy, Akorfa's mother, does and doesn't do that's good or that's bad. I won't give away any more of the plot of it than that, but suffice it to say, they have a falling out, and it's related a lot to family and really deep divisions. And Akorfa ends up living and marrying and living in the United States, where she went to school at the University of Pittsburgh. And Selassie ends up staying in Ghana, where she marries a man and opens a restaurant and, is successful in Ghana. And at the end, they're brought back together, essentially by the death of Akorfa's father, who had always been kind to Selassie. So anyway, there are all kinds of dramatic events that exist that explain why their friendship fell apart and then why they get back together at the end. So here's my problem with the story. First of all, it's pretty predictable. This is a story that, you are probably not going to be surprised by any of the plot points, major plot points that come up. You can kind of see them coming. You can't predict them before you start reading the book, but once you start reading it, you begin to be able to predict what's going to happen. Within like 20 pages of something happening, you're going to go, I know what's going to happen now, and then it does. So it's not an incredibly, complex or unpredictable plot. That's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that these three parts of the story essentially require you as a reader to read through, a good 100+ pages of what can be a fairly tedious accounting of Akorfa's life, her relationship with her mother, her success, her relationship with Selassie from her point of view, and then her going off to college and all the troubles and, struggles she faces in the United States. And I didn't really enjoy that part of the book. When you get to the Selassie's part of the book and you see her point of view and you see the differences in how she saw things and how Akorfa sees things, the book gets much better. And then when you get to that third section which is titled A Corfa and Selassie, when you're basically, their stories are reunited by something, and I'll leave that to you to read, then that you get this dynamite kind of part of the book that is the best part of the book. So that you know, can present a problem as a reader, but I hope, you know, a lot of people will read it and get to that point. The only other thing I would say here is the book can be a bit heavy-handed in its messaging. I struggle with that increasingly. I'd like to see it handled more subtly and in more deftly, I think, is what I'd like. It's pretty heavy-handed near the end of the book, but nonetheless a really satisfying read and a really good book. Anyway, there you go. There are the 4 good books I wanted to review for today's video. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.